And welcome back. We're back on air. Thank you for joining us. My name's Kevin Boris from the 9 Years podcast, and you are watching, whether you meant to or not, the 2018 Don's Trust Elections candidate interviews. So I'm joined by my 9 Years colleagues, Mark Hendricks, who's making all this work, Nick Draper, we're doing shifts. We're interviewing people one after the other. Nick Draper is waving, but you're not on camera, Nick. But that's fine. Stuart Deacons is on viewer questions, and George. George is here too. We're not quite sure what George is doing. George is in charge of time, not the entire construct of time, but George is in charge of the timings that we have here. So, candidate number 4. It's Hannah Kitcher. Hi, Hannah.
Hi, and I'm sorry that I messed up the timings by being late.
Yes. There's no point getting away from the fact that you have messed it all up entirely, but it's absolutely fine. But luckily, Dennis Lowndes does understand how time works, and also understands how traffic works, public transport on a Saturday morning. So anyway, Hannah, no, it's fine, Hannah. Everything is fine. You know, it's great. So. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for standing, most importantly, one of the 11 people that's standing. I want to point something out, though, Hannah, we'll be back with you in a second. People are engaging with us on social media, which is great. So people are watching on YouTube, there's people on Facebook, there's all kinds of things on. It's great. There's also Twitter, which I'm not on, but I have been alerted to a Twitter post. Gary Jordan, big Don's fan, author of books, very good writer as well. Gary has tweeted something that we'd like to read out, because it's quite important, because we don't understand what it means. So Gary is a very good communicator. I think he's dropped his phone. It says, this is from Gary Jordan, having just watched Rob Crane on the 9 Years podcast hustings event, this is what this is, I can't recommend Wat Hung Theses enough. So Gary, if you are watching, could you take off your Klingon translation package from your phone? Because we don't really understand. We've all put Wat Hung Theses in our phones in predictive text to see what comes up next, and it doesn't make any sense at all. So, Gary, thank you for watching, and thank you for taking part and for taking the time to send us this stuff. But can you put it back in English? Because we'd like to read out the tweet. Genuinely want to read it out because this is good. People are watching and are engaging with us. So, thank you for that. I just thought I'd add that bit. So, Hannah, we know you're Hannah Kitcher. We know that. So, Hannah and I were on the radio together about 2 weeks ago on Love Sport Radio. One of the things that Aaron, the presenter, brought up was your occupation.
Yes.
Because you mentioned what you do for a job. We're asking all the candidates what they do for a job. Because you want to find out what the person is, not just what they're standing for. Your occupation, I'll let you say it, because I didn't actually understand at the time. Can you tell us what you do again?
I'm a communications manager
got that bit.
A think tank that champions responsible technology. We're called .everyone.
.everyone. So you champion responsible technology. Okay.
So, like, in the light of Cambridge Analytica and the Facebook scandal and everything, we've become a lot more prominent in media and press because people are asking for comments about how can we mitigate those problems in the future. And we've put a policy report out to government are writing a white paper at the moment on how to regulate the internet, and we're sort of like informing that. We think about how to make the internet fairer and better.
Excellent. No, now I understand much more now. Thank you. So here's the big question: how long have you been a Don's fan for? You are one of the younger candidates, one of the youngest candidates. How long have you been a fan?
Yes, I started the first game I came to. I can't actually remember the actual game, but it was out of interest. I knew there was a club down the road. I was living in Tooting, and that was in the season that we got promoted from League 2 to League 1, ahead of anybody ever thinking that we were actually going to get promoted. So you can't call me a glory hunter, and I mean, I don't think you can now.
Nobody has. I don't think anyone has. So where do you watch home games from?
The Rygas.
From the Rygas, yes. I knew that because I stand up quite near you. Anyway, so we've got some questions there. The way this will work, we've got questions from Don's Trust members, we've got questions that are coming in live, and we've got at the end, to slightly lift the mood, obviously, we won last night, but it's not, people are divided into how exciting that game was. So we've got some interesting, fun questions at the end, because the original Wimbledon Football Club formed in November 1889, so we've got 89 seconds worth of questions for you. So the first question is, now we discussed your job and the fact that you're on communications, but in your manifesto you say that one of your priorities is to maintain and build our volunteer capacity. So do you mean that in terms of match day roles, what people do on a Saturday or a Tuesday, or work on behalf of the Don's Trust? And why do you think there's been a shortfall in the area? 16 years ago, you couldn't move for volunteers. There was hundreds of them. But so what practical steps can you take as a Don's Trust board member to rectify this and get people back to volunteering? We discussed earlier, I think with Rob Crane, that we're a League One club still relying on our volunteers, and we were up against clubs like Sunderland and Charlton and last season Blackburn. We just don't have that problem.
Yes, I mean, the whole volunteer element of the club is something that's really made me part of the club, and I want to be able to sustain that, because I've become a Don's Trust member not because of the formation of the since the formation of the Don's Trust itself, and I recognise that a lot of younger fans and the fans that we want to attract to the New Plough Lane I would aim to sustain the volunteer kind of capacity, because it's something that makes us unique into the New Plough Lane, but that in that transition it may not happen, and like you say, there's been a kind of decline in the number of volunteers, and I'm not just talking about volunteers on match days. Your volunteers doing this today. We've got a lot of distant fans and overseas fans that can support us with communications through various means, whether that be through how we communicate on social media. It's not just about those roles on the match days. I think there's a lot of untapped potential in the fan base. There are a lot of skills in the fan base, but it's whether they have been proactively reached out to and asked to for their support, or are supported in doing that and recognised in doing that.
Because you think of the issue that people are volunteering, which means working for free and because they want to. We're almost at that level now where we're asking people to volunteer, which isn't really volunteering, is it? It's kind of it's almost a compulsory volunteering, and I don't know how that works. It doesn't sit easily with many people. If I want to volunteer my time, I'll do it. If you sell programs or whatever, everyone who volunteers for the club does a fantastic job. But how do you engage? How do you get people to do more? It's unfair to get the people who already do stuff to do more. And if people aren't interested in volunteering, or the idea of volunteering isn't really what they want to do, you can't make them. That's not volunteering.
I mean, the reason I got involved in programme selling was because I saw a little advert in the programme, and I know that not everybody buys a programme, reads the programme, but I think that there is a section in the programme for the Don's Trust, and it's generally like quite a long prose piece about what's going on. That could be a lot more engaging as a page, simply like have a holding box that's a call out for the volunteers that we need right now, just to raise awareness about what skills are required. Because I do think there's a lack of understanding or awareness about some of the comms, some of the roles that need filling, and it's not just about you can volunteer. It's about being aware that it is capacity to volunteer, and that it is enjoyable to volunteer. And I would want the Don's Trust programme page to be a lot more of an up, sort of like keeping people feeling in the loop more on what's happening right at that moment. There is more of a capacity to do that. So I think it's not about forcing people to become volunteers, but just being a bit more proactive in reaching out, and also via social media, speaking to people on match days. I do a lot of it, and I can share my experience in a number of means.
Is it the issue with organisations, plural, that rely on volunteers, where my local MP, no longer my MP unfortunately, my local MP asked if I could get involved and help him. So I'm a journalist, that's my job. So I thought he would want me to write stuff for him or provide proofreading services or whatever, something to do with editorial. And what he wanted me to do was walk around the streets putting leaflets through people's doors. And I thought, I don't really want to do that. If you want me to write something, I'll do that. Is it the case where, using our club as an example, if you are a journalist or a filmmaker or a communications professional or a caterer and you volunteer, if there's no role for you to do what you like doing, and they go, well, actually, I don't need to do catering, I'd rather you sold programs, how does that work?
I think the problem is that there are a number of volunteer lists, and there's not one consolidated list. That there is a volunteer liaison officer, and there is more work that can be done to sort of understand just what are the gaps. I think there hasn't been that simple mapping exercise of who are the volunteers. It's all a bit confused. Who regularly volunteers in what, where the gaps are, and therefore what we want to actively reach out to do for people to do.
Yeah.
And I think that there is definitely, we know that as a trust and as a club in general, we're overstretched. Everybody's doing too much. That we can simply, there should be, I believe, the potential to get involved in a way that fits in with what you're interested in doing. I don't think that should be an issue.
Thank you. Good answer. By the way, Nick clearly had far more time in his hands than he said, because he spent some time clearly coming up with amusing what's the word? Anagrams. I can't even speak today. Anagrams of all the candidates' names. So you, Hannah Kitcher, thank hen chair. It's not one of the worst ones. If you're looking at that thinking, really, honestly, there's far worse. So, second question. You say that you want to promote the values upon which the club has been built and share those values with other clubs. So why do you think that's important? And why should it be a priority now, what you've considered, again, in your manifesto, to be a key transitional point for the club?
That really came out of the fact that I don't really want to admit this, manage the Don's Trust Twitter account. It's a bit difficult I feel very constrained, because saying what the Don's Trust does on a regular basis is the communication, like, I have to go to the board and sort of get approval as to what we can say and when. Yeah. I feel like in my own personal capacity on Twitter, I can say a lot more and not be sort of like saying it from an organisational perspective. But through that, I've received a lot of messages from journalists and from other clubs that are interested in our model and wanting to speak to Don's Trust board members and learn about who we are, what we do, how we've gotten to where we are now. So I think that there could be a lot of potential for us to proactively kind of respond to those journalist requests a lot more rapidly, and also pitch out to journalists and explain just who we are and what we do, because there isn't, we're not communicating that very well to the outside world. And there are clearly clubs that want to learn. Columbus Crew, we were involved in because they were sort of going through a similar situation in America. We supported them, and I very much tried through the Don's Trust Twitter to kind of promote their Save the Crew campaign. And and there's a lot of people and a lot of clubs that aspire to what we be. It's I think we have a lot of potential to share that, and therefore promote our values, and therefore attract fans to the uniqueness of our club.
Did it work? Because the Columbus
Yes.
Crew are staying in Columbus, aren't they?
Yes.
Good. Well, that's good. So you've got experience of Don's Trust board meetings as a member of the Secretariat. So what have you considered to be the key strengths and weaknesses of those meetings? And where do you believe that you, as a Don's Trust board member, can implement changes to make them more attractive or more useful, or shorter or longer or more focused or whatever?
Well, partly I think one of the problems is that the Don's Trust board is just too big, too unwieldy. We're a fan-owned club. We cannot ask for all fans' opinions on every single decision. It would just take too long. In football, you need to be really rapid. But as a fan-owned club, you need to consult fans when necessary. But I think that it does become difficult when you're essentially the board should the meetings could be shorter without if there was a smaller number of people, because you wouldn't have to kind of keep going around and seeking everyone's opinions. The purpose of the board is to represent the members' views. And what I'd want to bring to that is I communicate with a lot of members through a variety of means, on match days, at meetings. There was the Bertie's Bar meeting last week, via social media, and really hear from we have a whole array of fans that engage with the club in very different ways, and members that engage with the Dons Trust in very different ways. And I want to bring to those meetings the views of that diverse membership, and it's not about my opinion. It's about reflecting the membership's opinion. That's what I believe should be my role.
Okay, good answer. Thank you. Now, questions from members. So we've got a question from Matt Cooper. And Matt asks, is it worth paying a little bit more to ensure that we have an architecturally interesting stadium that the local community and fans can be proud of? So what would you like to see incorporated into the stadium design? So let's get one thing straight between all of us, is that the pictures that we've all seen online for the last couple of years are not necessarily what the ground's going to look like until about 2025 if we're on a good run. What the ground will look like in actuality is not like that. That looks great. The floodlights coming through the top of the stand and the hotel and the huge great club crest on the side. That's not going to be there. We know that. So what do you want to see from the ground? As Matt said, you're driving past it. You need it to look like a football ground, but at the same time not be ugly with corrugated iron like we used to have at Plough Lane. So what's your answer to that? What do you want to see?
I do think that one of the key elements architecturally of the stadium, and it's been incorporated in the logo design to promote the stadium, because we need to promote it for its hospitality facilities as well, in order to gain more revenue, are the floodlights, and they are particularly distinctive. From an architectural point of view, that's a tough one. The main thing that I want to promote and see in the new stadium, I think it's probably going to be tough given the space constraints, is that essentially a fan zone, a fans area where we can maintain what we have. We're not going to be privileged with the same amount of space that we have at Kingsmeadow, but that is something that got me really coming back here every week, was the fact that you can mingle with fans in a sort of concourse area, an open area that's visible, which, and I wouldn't want to see them sort of tucked away underneath the stands. I think that we can make a lot of that, hopefully. Because
one of the things that was brought up earlier was the idea of a creche. Obviously, Stuart Deakinson with us. Stuart has brought his 6-month-old son, Thomas. Is he a member of the Dons Trust?
Not yet.
Not yet, but he will be. So maybe we'll interview him.
Well, I can afford it. I have a wife at home.
Oh, that's true, yes. Fair point, Stuart. So, just now you know Stuart's home arrangements too, which is nice. We have a domestic live on camera. And that's not possible. There's no room for a creche now. It's all a money thing, isn't it? It's finance. So you can make the ground look nice from the outside, but from the inside it doesn't really work. It should be more for the people in the ground rather than driving past it. But Matt makes a very good point there. Okay, so we have 3 viewer questions. 4 viewer questions. This is the most so far, Anna. So you've clearly stoked people's interest. So, Stuart, question number 1. Who's it from and what does he want to know?
Yes, I've got 4.
They want to know.
I've got 4, and the reason for that is two are very linked. So the first one is from, Lawrence Lown. He's staying and watching us today.
Hi, Lawrence.
So, hi, Lawrence. Thank you for that. So this is for Hannah on her own. Are our female supporters underrepresented across the football club?
We have the... well, clearly we've only got one at the moment on the board, one other female member in Jane Lonsdale. And I'm not sure of the kind of percentage of female fans, but we certainly have a strong female fan base. And I think what's already been done in terms of and what is going on in terms of diversity and reaching out is great. There is the Wombells that happens once a year, and then we've had Women in the Game. There are things that are happening to support female members, and I think we are actually, as a club, very much an open and inclusive club. I've never felt maybe I've never felt different for being a woman, essentially. But I'm not sure. I think that we can continue doing a lot of the good work that's already been set in motion.
It's a good question because it's the awful word of tokenism. Is where I work in South Africa occasionally, and they have a big issue with tokenism. A friend of mine runs a company. He is a Zulu by birth, and he has to employ a certain number of black candidates. And his point was, if they're not good enough, I don't want to employ them. I want to employ the best people for this job, but he has to employ a certain amount of black people for his job. It's the same with women, and it's a really difficult thing. It's the same with the South African rugby team. They have to have a certain amount of racial mix, which is a very interesting question. But for the same thing with women, do you have to have a woman on the board? So, thank you for that answer. Stuart, next question, please.
So this question is from Tina Shepherd. How would candidates engage the interest of young people in the Dons Trust? By young, I mean older than the Junior Dons Christmas party age and younger than almost everyone in the current Don Trust meetings.
So people in there, say teens then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's a huge appetite for... there's a lack of awareness, essentially, about what the Dons Trust represents.
Yeah.
There's a confusion about what it represents. And I think if we are better able to more proactively and repeatedly explain what the purpose of the Dons Trust is, to maintain the fan-owned and the uniqueness of our club, that will inherently be attractive to younger fans, because it's a very millennial thing to want to feel part of something that's a bit more like challenging the structures and the corporate nature of other. We are different to all other clubs, and I think if we can just explain that a little bit more, it would naturally get a lot more younger people interested and involved.
Okay. Stuart, question 3.
Okay, and the final one, it's a sort of a linked one. We've got 2 questions, but they're linked in there. Okay. So again, from Tina Shepherd, her question is, some volunteers feel that the club don't think their contribution is worthwhile. And Lee Rumbelow followed it up with, in some cases, if a volunteer doesn't step forward, no one is paid to fulfil that role. What are your thoughts?
That's a tricky one. That's good question, Lee. Excellent.
So it's...
kind of come back to what we said before about asking people to volunteer, which therefore isn't volunteering.
Well, if you ask people to volunteer, if they step forward, they're volunteering.
Yeah.
It's about communicating what the gaps are and what the needs are. There is an issue, massive. Like we know, I think we can do a little bit. We can do better in saying just that essentially the value add of volunteers and how we don't maybe talk about enough how what people do in their various roles is actually keeping this club going. And I think that's something that if you love your club, get involved, because it's going to keep us.
Yeah.
You can do a bit to make us progress.
I guess the question is also, has the novelty worn off of volunteering for your football club, and also the idea that the volunteers get at the end of a season, they get a trip to an away game paid for, dinner and stuff. Is that enough? Maybe they should get more. Maybe they should have 2. Maybe there should be more volunteering or volunteers incentives. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Anyway, right. So Hannah, thank you. 89 seconds, not 89 questions. All right, it's 89 seconds. 89 questions would be great, wouldn't it be fantastic? Are you ready, Hannah?
We're running way over.
Okay.
Okay, ready? Go.
Go. Pineapple on a pizza? Yes or no?
No.
Correct. Rom-com or thriller?
Thriller.
Oasis or Blur?
Oasis.
PC or Mac?
Mac.
Correct. £25 a year to be a Dons Trust member is too expensive, yes or no?
Yes.
Would you rather spend a week having to say your sentences backwards or communicating via charades? What a question.
Charades.
Charades, okay. Jack Black or Seth Rogen?
Jack Black.
Rowing machine or running machine?
Running.
This is the best question of all time. Would you rather live with boxing gloves for hands or ice skates for feet?
Ice skates for feet.
Avocados, yes or no?
Can I sit on the fence on that one?
No. No sitting on the fence. Avocados, yes
No.
or no? Okay. Alex Jones or Matt Baker?
Matt Baker?
Okay, good. Is ironing your clothes a waste of time, yes or
Yes.
no? Okay. What's worse, doing the laundry, doing the dishes?
Laundry.
Relegation, a disaster or a chance to rebuild?
Chance to rebuild.
And when you're making tea, bag first or milk first?
Bag.
Bag first
Mhm.
is the correct answer. Hannah Kitcher, thank you very much for your time. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
standing. I think Mark's about to press his very,
No,
very
there's
loud
no
bell.
point. You've got
Press the
20
bell.
seconds.
Press the bell. He's pressed the bell. Thank you very much. Aha! So, thank you very much for that. That's perfect. Hannah, thank you for your time again. Good luck.
Thank you.
I think you've done yourself justice, and I think everybody else does too. So, thank you for the questions, viewers. Thanks for everybody. A short break now of about 3.5, 4 minutes, and 3 minutes and 47 seconds. Apparently, is the gap. Thank you. George is indeed in charge of time. And we'll be joined after that with me again with Sean McLaughlin. Cheers, Hannah. Thanks.